pleased to have you as my listener this day. For me and you, it's yet another opportunity to learn and receive teachings of His Word. This is the New Life program from Adventist World Radio, the Voice of Hope. I'm your host, Victor Nyacharo. As always, your health is our priority. Similar to last time, Josephine Osumo has a health topic concerning your child. So to the listening parent, stay tuned. The servant of God, Pastor Kigunu Dwiga, has prepared another 3-part series talking about wealth. This time, he will be talking about the foolishness of wealth. Wow, I really want to listen to more about this. Here is Nairobi East SDA Choir to give us a song entitled Roll on Jesus. Enjoy.
Ride on Jesus, ride on, conquering King. I want to go to heaven in the morning. Ride on Jesus, ride on, conquering King. I want to go to heaven in the morning. If you meet my body, oh yeah. To heaven in the morning. Ride on Jesus, ride on, conquering King. I want to go to heaven in the morning. Ride on Jesus, ride on, conquering King. I want to go to heaven in the morning. Oh yeah. I want to go to heaven in the morning. Ride on Jesus, ride on, conquering King. I want to go to heaven in the morning. Ride on Jesus, ride on, conquering King. I want to go to heaven in the morning. If you want to go to heaven, oh yeah. Will I tell you? Oh yeah. Just keep your right from the gospel plow. I want to go to heaven in the morning. Ride on Jesus, ride on, conquering King. I want to go to heaven in the morning. Ride on Jesus, ride on, conquering King. I want to go to heaven in the morning.
Approximately 1 in 700 children born have cleft lip or cleft palate or both. A cleft is a fissure or opening, a gap, basically, that is in the kid. It is caused by the non-fusion of the body's natural structures that form before birth. It's a condition that has remedies and therefore can be corrected afterwards. In the next segments of The Health by Josephine Osumo, you'll get the insight on this disease starting from today. Stay tuned.
In our continuing series on mother and child, we focus on infants and young children. Today, we will talk about birth defects and in particular, cleft lip and palate. I'm your presenter, Josephine Osumo, and a warm welcome to you. Oral clefting occurs when the tissues of the lip and or palate of a fetus don't grow together early in pregnancy. Children with clefts often don't have enough tissue in their mouths, and the tissue they do have isn't fused together properly to form the roof of their mouths. A cleft lip appears as a narrow opening or gap in the skin of the upper lip all the way to the base of the nose. A cleft palate is an opening between the roof of the mouth and the nasal cavity. The front part of the palate is bony and is called the anterior or hard palate. The rear or posterior palate is called the soft palate. Some children have clefts that extend through both the hard and soft palates, whereas others have only partial clefting. The causes of clefting are not exactly known, though it's believed to be a combination of genetic and environmental factors. The risk of having a cleft may be higher for children whose sibling or parents have a cleft or who have a history of clefting in their families. Clefts can be broken down into different categories. 1. Cleft lip without a cleft palate. 2. Cleft palate without a cleft lip. 3. Cleft lip and cleft palate together. In addition, clefts can be unilateral, that is occurring on one side of the mouth, or bilateral, occurring on both sides of the mouth. Twice as many boys as girls have a cleft lip, both with and without a cleft palate. However, twice as many girls as boys have a cleft palate without a cleft lip. Because clefting causes specific physical manifestations, it's easy to diagnose. The increasing use of prenatal ultrasound means that some parents know before a child is born that a cleft exists. If the clefting has not been detected in an ultrasound prior to the baby's birth, it's identified immediately afterward. For many parents, what's most difficult is handling the fact that their child is different. Many parents feel unreasonable guilt that somehow they caused the problem, as well as worry that their child will be teased because of his appearance or because he has trouble speaking. If your child has oral clefting, it's important that you inform yourself about the defect and seek support from both the medical community and other parents who have been through this experience. Support can help you focus on your child's potential rather than on the cleft. The good news is that both cleft lip and cleft palate are treatable birth defects. Most children born with either or both of these conditions can have reconstructive surgery while they are still infants to correct the defect and significantly improve facial appearance. Reconstructive surgery can repair cleft lips and palates, and in severe cases, plastic surgery can address specific appearance-related concerns for you and your child. Children with clefting, particularly those who have cleft palate, will need to see a variety of specialists who will work together as a team to treat your child's cleft. Treatment usually begins in infancy and often continues through early adulthood, and although different experts will focus on your child's different needs at different stages, the entire team of experts will follow your child through multiple surgeries, growth, and development. The team specialists will evaluate your child's progress regularly, and the entire team will typically meet together annually to examine your child and discuss his case. In doing so, doctors try and look medically at the child as a whole child. This means examining your child's hearing, speech, nutrition, teeth, and emotional state. We will stop there for now. In our next program, we'll talk about the treatment of cleft lip and palate and also the specialists who make up the cleft lip and palate team. I have been your presenter, Josephine Osumo. Bye and God bless.
This is Adventist World Radio, the Voice of Hope, bringing you today's edition of New Life program. I'm your presenter, Victor Nyacharo. Remember that you can always reach us with your concerns, contributions, and thoughts about this program by sending them to the producer, Adventist World Radio, P.O. Box 42276, code 00100, Nairobi, Kenya. Our email address is awrnairobi@eau.adventist.org. Mangu SDA Group are here with the song, No Tears. Be blessed.
No tears in heaven, no sorrows even, all will be glory in that land. There will be no
no sadness, all will be gladness, when we shall join that happy band. No tears in heaven, no tears in heaven, sorrows and pain will all have flown. No tears in heaven, no tears in heaven, no tears in heaven will be known. Glory is waiting up yonder, where we shall spend our endless days. There we, the Savior, will be forever, when all our sorrows end this way. No tears in heaven, no tears in heaven, sorrows and pain will all have flown. No tears in heaven, no tears in heaven, no tears in heaven will be known. No tears in heaven will be known.
After successfully finishing the series on the snares of wealth, Pastor Kigundu Ndwiga is beginning a new series entitled The Foolishness of Wealth. Keep listening.
Dear listener, today I want us to look at the foolishness of wealth, which will be based on Luke 12, verse 13 to 21. I will read. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?" Then he said to them, "Watch out, be on guard against all kinds of greed. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man produced a good crop. He thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "This is what I'll do. I'll tear my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry." But God said to him, "You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourselves? This is how it will be with everyone who stores up things for himself, but is not rich towards God." Mr. Kiprop, well, not his real name, was one of the new converts to the Adventist Church in one of the major towns in Kenya. Mr. Kiprop came to the church for a whole year until he learned that the Bible expected him to give 10% of his income to God as tithe. Being one of the rich business people in that town, he felt his contribution was too much compared to the rest of the converts. He also felt that it would mean taking a lot of money from his business, which he was working so hard to expand. He also did not see why it was wrong to run his business on the Sabbath to increase his gain so that he could contribute more to the church. He offered to build a church and equip it, but not return a tithe of all in his income, which he felt was such a big sacrifice. When the brethren explained that that was not what the Bible taught, he got frustrated and quietly left the church. Many Christians today face similar decisions, and many have succumbed to the economic pressure and choose to make money their center of worship. According to my experience as a stewardship director, only an average of 20% of church members are faithful in returning tithes and give generous offerings. The statistics actually show that the more wealth one commands, the less faithful he or she becomes. In some instances, Christians who are known to be very faithful when they owned little changed overnight into tight-fisted misers when they accumulated wealth. How can this strange phenomenon be explained? The story recorded in Luke 12, verse 13 to 19, is an attempt by Luke to explain this scenario. This periscope, small story in the Gospel, has 3 sections which I want us to look at. The greed of the young man, the foolishness of riches shown by the rich man's experience, and the solution to the challenges of the rich, that is, how to become rich and still be saved. I want us first of all to look at the greed of the young man. Little is known of this young man. He is introduced abruptly into the section of warnings. He had a problem that he wanted Jesus to solve. For him it was a big issue, the division of inheritance. The Jewish rabbis were experts on legal matters and could be consulted for guidance on laws related to civil regulations. The young man must have regarded Jesus as a Jewish teacher and wished to seek his help. His chief concern was the unfairness of his elder brother in the distribution of the inheritance, a common dispute in many parts of the world. Does this amount to greed? Why didn't Jesus support his fight for justice, and yet God is a God who loves justice? How much time do we spend on fighting in the church, defending our rights? The issue of regional representation in church committees, remuneration of church workers, job distribution among communities, and others may be as pertinent to us as the issue of the division of inheritance was to this young man. Jesus knew that behind these calls of justice is the malady of greed. How can the same Jesus who said, if anyone would sue you and take your coat, let him have your cloak as well, give a different answer? The problem with the young man is hidden behind his clamor for justice. The basic problem is that he thought wealth was the answer to his woes. If only my brother can give me a little more money, my life will be full of enjoyment and fulfillment, he may have said to himself. He saw Jesus as a settler of disputes and not as Savior to be followed after forsaking all other things. That malady is hidden in many of us. If only I had a little money, I would be happier, is the cry of many believers. And yet Jesus' concern is to give true happiness that comes by learning to trust in Him. My favorite author says, Mammon is an idol of many. The love of money, the desire for wealth, is the golden chains that bind them to Satan. Reputation and worldly honor are worshipped by another class. The life for selfish ease and freedom from responsibility is the idol of others. But these lavish bonds must be broken. We cannot be half the Lord's and half the world's. We are not God's children unless we are such entirely. Dear listener, I would be very naive to suggest that money is not important in the Christian life. I believe that Jesus did not say that we should not be wealthy. However, there is something about wealth that contradicts the gospel. Money, as Jesus does, demands devotion, undivided attention, and total commitment. That is why money is never enough. And that is why Jesus spent almost a third of his sermons warning Christians against its dangers. Love of money and love of Jesus are in competition. Money, like Jesus, promises security, long and good life, power, peace, joy, independence, and freedom, among others. And it promises to deliver them right away. Unfortunately, the world's humanistic philosophies that govern human practice are controlled by faith in money. And we are living in a consumer-driven society where money is worshipped and sought for with all evangelical zeal and diligence. But where is the foolishness of the money-governed life? The parable of the rich fool is intended to answer this very question. First, the parable is full of personal pronouns, I, me, my, and mine, which contradicts Jesus' teaching on self-denial. Riches lead us to see ourselves as masters of our destiny. Instead of self-denial, the rich fool affirmed himself instead of seeking happiness in giving. He sought it in keeping. He had no room for the needy, the widows, and the orphans. He told himself, this is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And there I will store all my grains and my goods. And I will say to myself, you have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. Luke 12, verse 18 to 19. Secondly, the parable shows that wealth gives a misguided concept of the future. The foolish rich man expected to live happily thereafter. It never occurred to him that he had no thereafter. Wealth has the tendency to bring forth security. True security for the future can only be found in God. He was foolish because he did not see the temporary nature of the material blessings. He was foolish because he laid for himself unreservedly to a passing life. Luke 12 verse 15 is a warning against this kind of assurance and commitment to wealth. The Greek of the text is difficult to translate, but I would render it this way. A man's wealth is no guarantee for the continuance of life. The New Testament has three general characterizations of wealth. Number 1, wealth is seen as a stumbling block to following Jesus. The story of the rich young ruler, found in Luke 18 verse 18 to 30, the parable of the sower, that is the deceitfulness of wealth that choked the implanted word, found in Matthew 13 verse 22, and a picture of those who had left everything to follow him, show that wealth indeed is seen as a stumbling block to following Jesus. Similarly, the disciples who are sent out to preach are instructed to go without supply and rely on the hospitality of their host for their livelihood. That is found in Matthew 18 verse 8 to 10. Number 2, wealth is seen as a competing object of devotion. The warning of the inability to serve Mammon and God at the same time, found in Luke 6 verse 24, the counsel to the disciples not to accumulate treasures on earth, found in Matthew 6 verse 19, because their hearts would eventually follow, and the caution in our text which warns against the delusions that possessions can provide safety, all show that wealth is seen as an object of devotion. In fact, the epistles bluntly equate greed with idolatry, Ephesians 4 verse 28 and Colossians 3 verse 6, and warn the believers against falling in love with money, found in 1 Timothy 6 verse 6 to 8, and against lust for worldly things, as recorded in James 4 verse 1 to 10. Thirdly, or lastly, wealth is also seen as a symptom of economic injustice. The parable of the rich man and Lazarus, recorded in Luke 16, verse 19 to 26. The parable of the sheep and the goats, recorded in Matthew 25, verse 31 to 46. And the threats against the rich exploiting the poor, as recorded in the book of James 2, point to this problem. On the same point, the gospel is pictured as bringing good news to the poor, and the gospel is depicted as bringing bad news to the rich. Unfortunately, the rich fool and many Christians do not take the above warnings about wealth seriously. They allow themselves to drift into the habit of trusting money more than trusting God, by refusing to share it with others and by being tight-fisted in giving their tithes and offerings. They feel that if they gave a faithful and full tithe and a generous offering in keeping with God's blessings, they may lose their security and so opt to give a little token to blind the eyes of their fellow believers. Although they are regular in church attendance, their God is money. Dear listener, as we end the presentation for today, I want you to reflect on this question. Is money your God?
That brings us to the closure of today's program. It's always a privilege having your company, and I'm looking forward to it in our next program. Thanks, and remember to send us your views, comments and suggestions regarding this program to the producer, Adventist World Radio, P.O. Box 42276, code 00100, Nairobi, Kenya. Our email address is awrnairobi@eau.adventist.org. On behalf of the producer, I have been your presenter, Victor Nyacharo.
Atarejea atuokoe dhambini, haleluya, yuaja. Tumngojea Bwana arudi, jinsi alivyotuahidi. Atarejea atuokoe dhambini, haleluya, yuaja. Atakuja, yuaja, upesi tutamwona akija. 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 Twamhubiri ni raha yetu, twajua kazi yetu si bure. Ni Biblia yatueleza, akija atatuvika taji. Twamhubiri ni raha yetu, twajua kazi yetu si bure. Ni Biblia yatueleza, akija atatuvika taji. Atakuja, yuaja, upesi tutamwona akija. 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 Ni hakikisho Bwana yuaja, ambe